Representative Bobby Cox is entering his second term in the South Carolina House of Representatives. I speak exclusively with the state representative for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Representative Bobby Cox, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. It's an honor to be here today, so thank you.
You're very welcome. Obviously, you're a state representative for Greenville County. Let me just jump right into it because obviously everyone knows the news that just came down yesterday. The new $1.3 million expanded SCETV data casting pilot project that will actually start in Fairfield County, Jasper County, and York County School District 1. And the governor says this, quote, "This investment today will help ensure that our students who live without access to broadband will be able to keep up and have an access to key educational content lesson plans." And I know the governor says that at least 5,000 students in 34 different school districts across the state had little to no access to broadband. And data casting can be a temporary solution for those students learning from home. Let me ask you this, Representative Cox, what permanent solutions would be ideal for your county?
Well, that's a great question. And that's something the legislature has been discussing for years now. You know, I've just come in, I'm finishing up my second year, my first term. So this is a policy that has created a lot of discussion, especially in the world of COVID right now, when we're seeing kids and families not able to go to school, they're working from home or wherever, and there's a great need. So that's one of the benefits of COVID is that it's raised awareness of the need to make broadband accessible across the state, no matter where you live. In Greer here on the east side of Greenville, it's pretty suburban, pretty populous, but still you'll go down the street and there's pockets where families just don't have broadband. They don't have access to internet. So we can't assume just because in these populous cities they're taken care of. And so we have to take a full spectrum approach, if you will, to kind of dig into that. So it's a great step that the governor's done. The legislature's passed some funding this past spring to address it as well. And it's something that we need to be focused on. As you know, the legislature works in 2-year cycles and sessions. And so a lot of times we lose track of important things and are reactive, where this is something that we need to be on the front end. No matter if we're going back to 5 days a week or continual virtual learning, this is something we need to continue to dig into because we don't want our kids to miss out, and broadband is the way to do it. So that's the initial kind of access that we should be doing because, if a family has to go to a gas station where a school bus is to do schoolwork, I mean, what kind of a learning environment is that? How productive is that going to be for the child and for the family? So we have a responsibility to provide that as legislators in the State House. Yes.
And how many students in Greenville County still don't have access to broadband?
We did a briefing with the school board as we were kind of looking at ways to go back 5 days a week versus virtual, kind of a hybrid plan with social distancing, where we just didn't know a lot about the virus initially. And it was surprising. Greenville County is pretty populous. We have 70,000 kids in our school district alone. So it's a pretty large school district within the state, one of the largest. And so the numbers really surprised me. I'm from Travelers Rest originally, and once you start getting up to the Blue Ridge Mountains up there, it's beautiful, but it's the families are spaced more apart. And so you kind of take it for granted when you think Greenville is really populous, but there are pockets where people just don't have it, but I can get you that number, Quintin. I don't know the exact number, but yeah, I can get that to you.
And should the state make internet a utility in your mind?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this. I've been having all these kind of different discussions about this where, we've dealt with pandemics before, and so we've been taking a kind of a cookie cutter approach to handle a lot of the issues that we're seeing from our lessons learned previously. But this is an asymmetric threat. And in the military, we, during the initial war on terror, we're about to celebrate or remember September 11th, not celebrate, but remember it tomorrow. And so we approached that threat on the war on terror with very conventional means. And so we had to adapt very quickly to an asymmetrical threat. And that's what we need to do here. We need to meet this need with an asymmetrical mindset. And that's a paradigm shift that we should consider, making this utility, access to all in that regard. So I think everything's on the table to make sure that everyone can have access to that, because that's the initial tools for the window to knowledge and gateway to what we're doing now. So, but yeah, so that's a good consideration that I can bring up with my colleagues in the State House.
And will fiber lines ever be placed in rural areas of South Carolina in your mind?
Sorry, what was that? What'd you say?
Yeah, will fiber lines ever be, be placed in rural areas of South Carolina?
Yeah, and that's something where we have to get everyone in partnership and discussion, because we're working in pockets with different entities and everything. I mean, this is a city, county, state, municipality effort, private sector, utility companies, HOAs, builders. So should be a full spectrum discussion on how that looks like, and maybe it's worthwhile in some of the newer communities, or we do power lines or some some overhead lines, but it's got to be something. The status quo has not been working, has been very evident in the COVID environment. So yeah, that's a discussion as well. I'm going to be taking some notes so I can follow up with you.
Okay. And let me turn over to, obviously, nurses. This is the headline for the Post and Courier. Many SC schools may be dealing with a pandemic without a full-time nurse, and school districts across the state were scrambling prior to, obviously, reopening to hire nurses, which is a necessity as classrooms reopen amid a pandemic. But they're competing against each other, as well as hospitals that pay much more. Let me ask you this, Representative Cox. How much will the state be willing to pay and hire more full-time nurses?
Well, this has been a need even before the COVID environment. Nurses, we've projected that there was going to be a shortfall down the road for nurses, and so we've tried to react with more training pipelines. Up here in Greenville, we have a new a medical school. I know the Citadel, my alma mater, even has a nursing program that's in place. So I got to give them a shout out there. But we need to make sure there's an incentive for those nurses to work and stay here in South Carolina, and that's one profession among many, such as teachers and everything. So we need to incentivize and make it competitive to stay in our great state, and so we just need to identify that. And like you said, they're going to go where they're appreciated, where the money's good, the training's good, and they're just appreciated as a vocation. So we need to have that mindset as well as we recruit and retain nurses in our state.
Now, with those full-time nurses, how much will this actually cost the average taxpayer?
Yeah, we'd have to look at that. I don't know in that regard, where it comes to, private sector jobs, public sector jobs, so we'd have to do a cost benefit analysis of private versus public in that regard, and how we're paying for those scholarships, paying for the schools, that kind of thing. So, I'm an upstate Republican. I believe that, private sector competition is the best. We don't turn it for all of our needs and wants. So, I would like to see the private sector make it very lucrative for nurses to stay here, and drive that competition. So, but yeah.
And in that article, it says this too. As of late May, about 130 schools had no nurse on campus, that is, and an additional 75 shared a nurse with another school, according to a survey by the State Department of Education. How many nurses are still needed in Greenville County?
Oh yeah, like I said, we're the largest. When you're talking about just schools, we have a lot of part-time nurses, retired nurses that help out, and so and like I said, I don't think government is the end-all be-all to meet our needs, but in a time of emergency like this, where we're going back, we're dealing with this pandemic, there is CARES Money Act that's being appropriated from the federal level through us to the states and to the counties. And so that's something that you can meet the immediate need to have a nurse on hand, to make sure, the medical procedures are being, implemented. It's being recommended by, the medical associations and societies and everything. So, yeah, I don't know the exact need, but I know there's one. My kids go to public school down the road here, and they have a great nurse. They look to her for guidance and reassurance. So not only is it a medical professional there, it's someone that inspires and instills confidence that they have this under control in the school. So it's a very needed position, especially now more than ever.
And let me turn to the actual pandemic. Let me ask you this too, Representative Cox. when you talk about testing versus infection, how many testing cases are there in Greenville County, and how many are actually infection cases?
Yeah, so, and this is something I hope that we address when we go back to session next week, is that, we need real-time data, accurate data to make these decisions of what's going on within the pandemic. So, Greenville, we have a lot of facilities here that do testing. So we have a lot of folks from outside the county that come in and get tested. But then, are we rolling those numbers into Greenville County testing? Are we parsing those out to where they're coming from different counties to here? That's been the frustrating aspect, is that we have asked a lot of people to disrupt their lives, their jobs, their way of living, many times on not accurate data, which is what drives me nuts. Like, I don't mind making hard decisions and doing hard things if I have the right data. But if we don't have that accurate data, how can I tell a business owner, that you need can remain closed if it's not accurate, if we don't really know how bad or how far reaching the COVID virus is. So that's something that we as legislators provide oversight. We're giving a lot of money to DHEC. We're getting a lot of money to hospital systems, and we need to dig into it and get lessons learned down the road if that was used wisely, and then get lessons learned of how to react. And so this doesn't happen again, or we can have accurate data to make decisions that really affect the businesses and schools and families within our districts and in our state.
And with the COVID situation affecting the state economy, how has it affected sales tax revenues in your district that really are needed to fund transportation and other major projects?
Yeah. It doesn't take a rocket science to drive down to the gas station and see there's, especially during the initial part when we told everyone you need to flatten this curve, there was no one out. No one was traveling. I had multiple trips canceled. And so, no one was going out to eat. It was, to the restaurants. We did a good job of pivoting and doing the carry outs to make sure that we could provide, some type of service to our food and beverages folks to sustain them as much as we could. But it's, there's a huge drop. And that's why, we're going back in session next week and next 2 weeks. We just don't know how bad it's going to be here in the upcoming fall. We were on track to give teachers a pay raise. We were on track to pass education reform. And we just don't know where we are right now as an economy, with tourism down, like I said, the sales tax, which is, a great revenue driver for the state and the county itself. So we don't really know how bad or good it's going to be. Most likely be bad, because people buyer confidence has not been there, And so time will tell in that regard. But we're ready to react to it as a state as needed and step in if we have to.
Let me jump right into it. Jeffrey Collins of the Associated Press wrote this on September 9th, quote, "A small raise for teachers and a hazard pay bonus for many state employees who couldn't work from home during the COVID pandemic are in the spending plan headed to the South Carolina Senate floor next week. Even if the Senate agrees to the proposals that change the budget, they aren't guaranteed to pass the House, whose leaders have suggested lawmakers at least consider that the state should make no changes in spending until at least January." Let me ask you this, Representative Cox. What proposals would guarantee a pass in the House right now?
Yeah, so we had a lengthy discussion about this, and I've heard from a lot of teachers and principals throughout the state, because we're not only are we asking our teachers to teach, to do their job, but they're also planning for virtual. They're essentially being janitors in their classroom to help clean up. They're dealing with a lot of mental stress, and then some of them may have underlying issues that make them more susceptible to COVID and its effects, and so there is an inherent heightened risk in what they're doing, and then the stress level as well. And so my wife and I, she's a trained teacher by trade. When we were in the military, she taught wherever we went. But we talked about this. Like, hey, is there some type of incentive pay we could do? And like I said before, we were on track to do a step increase, salary increase, to be more competitive in the southeastern region for teachers, because it's such a crucial job that we need to show that we appreciate them. But the fear from the House perspective, and I know the Senate is considering implementing that the pay raise regardless. The House is the big discussion with our leadership was that we didn't want to give a pay increase or a step increase, and then the economy be so bad we had to react with that, and then we weren't able to honor that in January as well. So we didn't want to give it and then take it away. And so there was, and I understand that perspective. I understand the teacher's perspective. And I sit on the education committee in the House, and it's been a grueling time to just meet these demands. But I'm hoping that during debate and digging into the numbers, and this was about a couple of weeks ago in regards to that we can not only give pay raises to teachers, but also sustain them going into the next year. And so that's still up for discussion as we go back into session next week and the week after that.
And the article goes on to say this: state budget officials have predicted that the state should collect as much in taxes and fees this budget year as last. How much taxes and fees have the state collected thus far, and how much has been given back to, say, Greenville County?
Yeah, so it's been an unconventional year with revenue flow, and we started off this year very hopeful. We had a surplus. We were going to address a lot of the needs that have been put on the back burner for a while. Like I said, education reform and other things in that regard. And a lot of it was coming to Greenville to help out, one of the most populous counties, and to increase tourism and to increase, this place to be a destination. And all of that has been put on hold. All of it. I mean, it's very frustrating. We just created this Department of Veterans Affairs. We were going to help out veterans more in the state, and all of that just hit the pause button until we figured out what was going on with this pandemic. And so we don't know what we don't know yet because we just don't know the data. And that's why the House in particular is being very conservative about spending money, because we never want to get into a position where we have to ask for more money. And that's something I just don't want to do. During a time of crisis, people are losing their jobs. There's no way that I will support any kind of tax increase or anything like that, because we need to protect the money that the people have right now instead of being like, oh, we're in an emergency, we need more money and income. So that's been the hesitancy on the House part to spend money until we see where we are coming up in the fall, going into the new year.
And you talk about the Veterans Affairs. You were actually poised to be the first director of the South Carolina Department of Veteran Affairs months ago, but because of an 80-year state law banning a lawmaker from leading an agency created during his term, you couldn't become director. But let me ask you this, Representative Cox. Who would have been Bobby Cox as director of the Department of Veteran Affairs?
Who would he? What I would have been like? Or
Yes, sir.
Well, I tell you, it was an honor to be considered to be the first nominee. And I was, I felt like I could do a great job with serving our veterans. That's been a passion of mine because I'm a veteran myself, and the military and this country has done so much for me. And this was a community that I really wanted to give back to, and so felt like I could do some good in that job. But I tell you, God had other plans. We just missed this law that was out there. And I would have been doing what the Secretary Grimsley now is doing, is like putting systems in place to reach out to our veterans, pulling all the nonprofits and all the goodness that's going out there in the state that's helping veterans, pulling them under one umbrella so we can not replicate resources but maximize what's going on out there. And he's had a great challenge. I stay in contact with him a lot because I told him, like, even though I'm not the secretary, I will use my position to help veterans because it's just that's just what you do. You give back to that community that's done so much for our country. And so he's been in a different environment because he just hasn't been able to get out and about and meet veterans. And and finally the world's opening up where he can do that. So sometimes you're right. Sometimes I think, like, what would I be doing right now if I were the secretary? During COVID and everything like that. So. But I would be doing exactly what the secretary is doing now, is just making it a world-class organization that's helping our veterans. So, and I'm behind him 100%. He's doing a great job. And I'd say that because he was one of my choices that I submitted when we were looking at the committee process, the selection process.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, State Representative Bobby Cox, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups, and I got to come and visit the city of Greenville one day, God willing.
You're welcome anytime. We'll do a follow-on interview up here, and I'll show you around. It's like I said, Charleston is my second favorite city in the state. So
that's right. We appreciate that.
Yeah, that's right. But you let me know if you need anything, and let me know when you're up here. We'll go hit some good restaurants and everything like that. Oh, yeah, there you go. That's right. So,
yeah. Well, thank you for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for reaching out. Let me know if you need anything else, and stay safe down there. So
you too.